Hello and welcome to the Mariner. We are back here in Nova Scotia. There's been a bit of a gap here. Things have been going on. A few people close to the project will know we had a few issues in Portugal with a project that we were going to do. Remember, we were going to go over there, pick up Longobarda. I had the nice video on the YouTube channel you could see. Things changed, the plan developed. I'm standing here on a boat. I'm in Nova Scotia. Clearly we've got a success story, but it's maybe not quite the one you're expecting. Have a listen to the story. Okay, so welcome to Weddell. Weddell is an 82-foot maxi. Any boat that's over 70 foot is called a maxi. She's a maxi that was designed in the late 1990s. She was designed initially for a round the world race. It was going to be called the Mistral race, going around the world. At that time, the Whitbread race had started to kind of lose some of its energy. They were looking for new sponsorship, and there was a thought that, well, maybe we can have a different kind of race, a one design race. And that's interesting because they were ahead of the game there. That's exactly where the Volvo race ended up 20 years later, a one design race with the Volvo 65s. The Mistrals were built to do a lap around the planet through the Southern Ocean, built incredibly strong, designed by FAR Design Studios, which are the same people that designed Longobarda. They're the people that designed Yamaha that I used to own. So very strong offshore racing boat, but came in at a time where the Whitbread 60s had just done the 1993 race. Yamaha had come in within 6 hours of an 89-foot maxi, and there was a thought process that maybe we want to focus on those 60-foot boats. Maybe there's something in 60-foot boats that we've overlooked. That thought process became IMOCA 60s, the Volvo 60s, the Volvo 65s. That's where it's gone because they are the fastest boats at sea. So the Mistrals came in at a point where it was just getting not cool to have a maxi, but there was still, this was kind of the maximum evolution of an offshore maxi racing boat. Say 82 foot long, Kevlar hull, foam core, as we know from the other boats. We've got a thin scrim of thin scrim of Kevlar on the outside, foam on the inside, and then more Kevlar on the outside. But this one with a huge grid system set into the center, aluminum grid system that the keel bolts to. So we can have a quick look round. Obviously at the back, pretty standard for one of these race boats. Two big wheels. One little detail I love on this boat is it's got a nice kind of kick-up step here, slides out. So then when you start to helm, you've got a position for your foot. Two wheels on these boats. Mainly there's redundancy here. The steering cables from this one go down to the quadrant. The steering cables from this one go down to the quadrant. And if you break a cable over here, that wheel's still working. It means also that with such a wide boat, you end up with the crew all on the high side when you're racing. So this kind of setup very, very normal for us. Big winches at the back here, big indeed 3-speed winches for the backstays. This one's got a mooring line on it right now, but if we look over here behind us here, the backstays come in on this boat, come onto these winches, and this is a dedicated winch just for the backstays. Backstays on this boat a little bit different perhaps to other ones we've had. If we look up here, we've just got two backstays. We've got a check stay that goes up and meets the third spreader, which is where the staysail connects. And then the mainstay goes up above the fourth spreader, and that's the one that holds the forestay loads. This mast, though, importantly, is a carbon fiber mast. So a step on from the Whitbread 60 I owned Challenger, more closer to what we've got here on Falcon. These big carbon fiber rigs are much lighter, really increasing the performance of the boat. This boat has 12,000 kilos of lead on the bottom, so we're over 25,000 pounds of lead on the bottom of it, and it's 4.5 meters, just about 14 feet, something like that, down below the waterline. So incredibly light in the rig, incredibly heavy in the ballast, and that ballast set way down under the boat, so very, very stable. We can see on the side decks here also, we've got these little cowl vents, which are very similar to what we see on the side of Falcon. These are the tops of the ballast tanks. So this boat can put 6 tons of ballast in, 6,000 kilos of ballast, either on the port or the starboard side, or bring it to the aft if you're broad reaching, blast reaching, big kite up. You can sit the back of the boat down. So built for speed, out and out and out. Built for strength, built for speed, and built for racing through the Southern Ocean. So perfect for what we want to do for this project. The boat's designed to be raced by about 16 to 18 people. That's probably the numbers that we'll see come on board. Because it'll be a crew that's new to this kind of racing, we may increase the capacity somewhat. And you're going to see down below that we've got an interior which has been developed so that it can have a bit more of a kind of corporate feel. It's not just an out-and-out race boat anymore. It's got a couch, it's got some cushions, it's even got like a galley and a glass bowl in the heads. It's completely amazing for me. But we can just do a few modifications, just drift it a little bit back towards being the out-and-out race boat that we want for the Ocean Globe race. And then this boat has been perfectly set up for what we want to do with the veterans, and indeed with anybody that's coming and joining us with that race. It's very nice, clean, open deck. All of the work for the running the boat happens there in the cockpit. Let's go over and have a see the setup that's in here, because really for what we want to do, it's absolutely perfect. So welcome to the cockpit. For those who have seen either the video about Challenger or they've been on Challenger, you'll recognize a lot of similarities here. We've got all the winches laid out. They're somewhat dedicated to particular jobs, but also they can be cross-connected in new and novel ways to solve problems. It's a toolbox of winches, as we always talk about. So we've got a couple of different sort of winches here, one of which I don't think we've seen before on the Mariner. We've got a large 3-speed self-tailing winch here, very similar to the ones on Falcon. But then this guy, you'll see, has got a subtle difference to the top. This is a Grand Prix winch. It's got this makeup system at the top here. It is not self-tailing. You can lock out the rope on the top, but it is not a self-tailing winch. And its design feature is the fact that when you're coming to do a tack on a race boat like this, remember they do a lot of round the cans racing as well, quick tacks, you get to a point where you're ready for your tack and you want to spin off your line as fast as possible. With this kind of winch, there's nothing to stop the line spinning off the top. If we went to a self-tailing winch and we were trying to spin line off it, even when we get to this point where it's out of the self-tailer, if I try and spin it off, it gets hooked up on this little feeder here. Not so with the regatta winch. When it comes time to tack the boat, let draw the headsail, this thing just spins right off. So fantastic to have it on board the boat, and definitely in the future can be part of the boat's performance makeup. But for now, we actually didn't use them on the way across because you have to be very cautious about how you make up the top. And it's not self-tailing. We were a very short crew on the way over. You need to have one person holding the line and then other people grinding it. There's not the ability to just make it do all the job on its own, as we've seen before. So 3-speed self-tailing, 3-speed regatta winch or Grand Prix winch, and then these guys, the kind of bread and butter for this boat, 2-speed top-loaded utility winches of the kind we've seen many times before. These winches operate the halyards and operate the control lines for things on the foredeck. So utility winches, jib sheet winches, and then spinnaker winches with the backstay winch down the back. We then also on this boat have a dedicated main sheet winch, which is in the center here, which gives us the ability to control the main sheet. On Challenger, we always struggle a little bit. I do love Challenger, but she was kind of like over-optimized. She didn't have a main sheet grinder, and she had the main sheet controlled on the lazy backstay winch. Great, made the boat lighter, took away a lot of equipment, made it impossible to run the boat quickly in regattas. So now we've got ourselves a dedicated 3-speed main sheet winch. And one thing we see with Weddell is that pretty much all of the rope is pretty new. I think it's only got like a season and a half on it. It was all replaced in Cape Town just 2 years ago, and because of COVID, it's done almost no work. So we've got a nice new main sheet here, nice new jib sheets, halyards. Like, she's in great condition in that way. In the center, we've got the grinders, and on this boat we've got 3 grinders. The one at the closest to the main sheet is the one that we'd maybe call the main sheet grinder. It can be connected directly onto the main sheet, disconnect and reconnect with all these little things. Once this is turning, we are turning the main sheet winch. If I want to engage it with the winches ahead, I can disengage from the main sheet, re-engage with the gearbox at the front here, make sure things are on and off as I need them to be, and now I'm grinding what would be my mooring line over there on that winch. Then I can cross connect and have these guys involved. I could say, hey, okay, I want some more people involved in this. Now I get 2 sets of grinders going, and again I can do the same with the third one. So we can have up to 6 people powering one winch, which makes moving things a lot easier. It does mean though, with some of the stuff we found on the way over, like the main halyard on this boat is just a 1-to-1. It goes up inside the mast and then comes down and meets the mainsail. When you've only got a couple of people trying to do the reef with an 8-man crew, It does make it very heavy. We did have a lot of, like, okay, boys, just stop, wait, let's see what's going on. But if you've got 6 people here, that would be the fastest way of getting the mainsail up. So we may adapt some of the rope systems, but at least we've got the equipment here. We can start to adapt and make it easier for ourselves very, very quickly with just a few simple things. The other thing we've got on this boat is we've got some hydraulics. This is certainly an area that we'll be overhauling, but down here we've got this control panel. When we turn the little knobs to the 3 o'clock position, then we're able to pump on this handle over here, pump the handle and increase the pressure. That one would be increasing the pressure on the outhaul. The next one I can see has got a tag is the vang here, so we can pull down on the vang, pull down the mainsail. The other ones that are in there, I know one of them is for the check stay. We'll see that we're in the galley. You can see the piston there for the check stay. The other one is marked with nothing. They have disconnected the tip stay, the stay that goes right to the top of the mast and bends the rig. That's been disconnected. But I think because of the kind of charter work they were doing, we'll take that and reconnect it and put it on, and then this will be back up to full fighting force. But for now, yeah, turn to the right and you're pumping pressure on. Take this, put it in the center, that's its hold position. Turn it to the left, and then that releases the pressure out of it. So you can get really good pressure on everything and monitor those pressures so that you know you've got the correct setting. I have no concept what these are, but look, this one comes out and it has wires attached, so who knows? We've still got a few mysteries to dig through on this boat, but it doesn't seem to affect the operation. We have just driven it 3,000 miles back across the Atlantic, so who knows what it is. All right, let's have a look at the mast and have a look on the foredeck of this boat. All right, so this boat, one of the things is a big, nice, wide, clean side deck. So we've got the spinnaker pole over on the starboard side at the moment, and that's about a 40-foot carbon fiber pole. We may or may not keep the spinnaker poles as part of this. Obviously, you'll know that a boat really needs to be kind of designed to have or not have a spinnaker pole. It may be with this weight of hull, with this hull form, that the best way for this boat to go directly downwind is still to brace back with a pole and to go downwind. The quicker boats, more modern boats, squarer bums, it may be able to get down to the bottom mark on a race course by jibing their way down there with an asymmetric sail set on a spinnaker pole. We will have to see where this boat's performance at. We want it to have the best possible performance. The pole may or may not be part of it. We'll see. It's a complication, but if it's a performance building complication, of course we'll keep it. But I'm kind of hoping we can get rid of it, and then we just have these nice wide open foredecks. But we've got the jammers and clutches here, which control the main control lines, the halyards, the reef lines, and the adjustment of the cars on the side decks. Big side deck cars on this boat, and in fact we've still got the cars to sit on the outside here for controlling spinnakers. We may change that. We know that in more recent times we have a control car which goes across the side deck, no overlapping headstalls. That may be somewhere that we go with it, but fully functional for now. And the great thing with this boat, everything is in wonderful condition. When we first got to her, there was a bit of a kind of sinking of my heart because she'd been moored alongside like an old derelict battleship, and 1,000 seagulls from on board that ship some of them had decided to come and be part of this boat, so now there was hundreds of seagulls here and the mess that they make. But we've dug down slowly under that as we've done the transatlantic, and everything underneath is in great condition, so it's really been a success story. Good thing with this boat, a lot more ventilation than I've had on Challenger. And there's a secret kind of function for this one. This boat has a very strong aluminum grid that we talked about in the center of the boat. What we can do is when it comes time for this boat to be lifted, rather than having spreader bars and the slings that it normally goes into, we can actually get the crane hook, put a big Dyneema strop down through this hatch and attach to the keel, and this boat can be single point lifted. So she weighs about 20,000 kilos, about 45,000 pounds in total, and the crane can get hold of her on the keel, keel box essentially, and then just pick her up from that. So that may simplify some of our operations later on. We don't have access to huge amounts of lifting infrastructure for bigger boats here in Nova Scotia. This makes our life so much easier. Looking up above that, we've got this vang here, big hydraulic vang, and for those that in the know, you'll recognize this power vang. It's got a big spring inside it. I think it might be compressed air, it may be a spring, I'd have to check, but it's holding the weight of the boom and the weight of the sail up at the moment, so we don't have to worry about a topping lift. The boom's never going to fall down into the boat. This power vang keeps it high above people's heads. This is also controlled by the hydraulic setup that we just saw, so we can crank it down powerful, keep the top of the mainsail pulling hard. The mainsail on this boat, I got to say, we did not even look at the mainsail before we took it out the first day. I talked to the owner, said to him, "What's underneath that boom cover? Is it good?" He said it's about a 3 out of 5. I'm like, great. We were at a point where it's just kind of, let's just slide on through and get this deal done as quick as we could. Indeed it is. It's about a 3 out of 5. Big mainsail on this boat, as you might imagine, a pin-headed main, but it's been great the whole way across. It's got 4 reefs in it. It was absolutely perfect. So we really lucked out there. And then at the bottom of the mast here, I guess we get our first indicator from these moldings. And the way it's shaped through here, this is a carbon fiber mast. So this one I think is 35 meters high. So we're about 108, 109 foot, something like that. And this mast would be much, much lighter than a comparable aluminum mast. The one on Longobarda was all aluminum. It had been trimmed down some, but the boom alone I knew was a couple of 100 kilos on Longobarda. This one is just going to be about 70, 80 kilos, some of that. Similar weight savings on the mast. The mast on Falcon weighs about 480 kilos. It's a little bit shorter than this one. I would imagine this probably weighs about 550, 560 kilos. If it was aluminum, you'd be up on 800 kilos easily. So massive weight savings there, and adding that performance to the boat that we want to see when we get out onto the water. So the other thing we've got on this boat, which we can see, is that the rigging on this boat, maybe not visible over there, but on the side deck here, and a good comparison with Falcon, the rigging on this one is nitronic rod rigging. So this is nitronic 50 rigging, which we've seen before. This is what Challenger has. It's just as strong as the PBO rigging that we've got on Falcon, but it's so much cheaper. It's also incredibly resistant to chafe and incredibly resistant to any kind of damage. So this was what went on the Whitbread and Volvo 60s. It's here on this boat. Personally, I really like that. We could increase the performance of the vessel by dropping this off and putting PBO rigging on, but we'd be looking at $100,000 to replace it. As is, it's probably $50,000 or $60,000. Everything on these boats obviously is spectacularly expensive, but it's in great condition. It's recently been serviced and given the thumbs up, so we don't have to worry about that right now. But before we go around the world, we'll definitely be replacing it. So I'm very happy to know it's the cheaper variety. Up on the front of the boat definitely is an area where we're going to be making some changes. At the moment we've got this staysail on here, this beautiful brand new staysail which we found in the forepeak when we first got the boat. Literally had bits of thread and tape still stuck to it from where it had been built in the sail loft. Ahead of that though, we've got a hank-on jib, and that does make it very, very labor intensive for the crews. I've raced around the world with Clipper. I love what they do. I love they have jobs for everybody, and I raced around the world when they still had symmetric kites and twin spinnaker poles, and very, very labor intensive for everything. But in terms of a safety point of view, I really want to see that become a roller furling jib. And then the things that we're changing in and out the staysail, changing in and out the code 0 or the code 5 or whatever spinnaker we've got up, but that the jib itself is 100%, you know, just press a button either if it's hydraulic or pull on a line if it's manual. But getting that in place would make the front of this boat so much easier to deal with. We've got 4 reefs in the main, all controllable from the cockpit. We've got a roller furling headsail, roller furling staysail, and then on that pad eye in front we can do roller furling storm jib. So we should be able to go, when we know conditions are starting to get a little bit harder, we can roll away the jib, put the first reef in, roll away the staysail, put the second and third reef in, and then finally come to the storm jib and the 4th reef without really having left the cockpit. So a couple changes here and we'll be looking in very good form. The last thing with this boat, it does have a bowsprit sticking out the front. They weren't originally designed with that. It's been added, gives that little bit of extra projection for spinnaker work. We'll have to see how that goes. Personally, I would like to see a little bit longer one. If we're not racing one design, why not have a slightly longer bowsprit? Maybe give the boat slightly more graceful lines as well. But it's there, it's functional, the mounting points are already there, so really just a modification and we'll get what we want. So very, very little that we need to do on the deck of the boat now to change it to exactly what we need it to be. And that's, I think, what I realized. I said in that description that I had that day. We'd had 2 weeks of negotiating for Longobarda. I was set on Longobarda, that's what I wanted. And I had to stand way back and say, what am I trying to achieve here? What we're trying to achieve is setting this up to sail around the world. It's not about just buying that one boat. So when we dropped onto plan B, there were a lot of questions, and this boat's just ended up being better and better and better than I could ever imagine. So come and see the best part of it, which is inside, where for once we actually have a modicum of comfort. Welcome to the interior of Weddell. We've got lots and lots of space. First thing, I've got to say, initially I thought these stairs were like a big problem. They're actually genius. If you've got a sail that's going up and down, there's nothing to catch on, it goes straight up. But you'd have to make sure that crew don't come down at a very accelerated rate. We all, I think, recognized very early on that for once, turning and going down like a ladder was the only way of dealing with this. You know how it is normally when you're going down a companionway, you just rush down forwards and tell everybody else to turn around. This one you really have to turn around. But big staircase box, and behind here all of the electronics, the inverter. This boat's systems are actually in great condition. A few little changes we need to make, but it's looking great. Behind there, a nice big electrical space. In this area, when we first saw pictures of the boat, it had nice sculpted cushions on these benches, and it had a table here and a bench here and another table there so people could sit. When we got to the boat, it's all missing. The previous owner said that it was quite lightly built. It was probably intended for doing charter work in Italy, and just too light to be used at sea. We're going to build something in here. The conclusion we've come up with is that we're going to put like a strongly made bench here facing inwards with big rails on it. We're going to put a very strong table in the center and another strongly made up seat. So there's at least seating for like 6 people, maybe 8 people here. And then probably some kind of flip up on the back of it so some people can sit and eat there as well. So the initial design of this boat, this would have been the galley. This would have been a U-shaped galley in here with a stove here and another arm coming down this side, a door here, and then was another door there, and then everything forward of this bulkhead would have been for sails, basically. Just a great big open area. And if I don't miss my guess, because it was 97, there would have been a Kevlar pedestal with a SATCOM system, one of those big SATCOM systems like we've seen on the back of Falcon, in there with no shroud on it. Because a Kevlar boat, you can fire a radio signal right out through the side of the boat. So the best place to keep the antenna was inside the boat. So it would have been totally empty going forwards. We're probably 35 feet along the boat, so the other 45 feet of the boat would have been basically empty. So this boat's been modified, as we can see. There would have been bunks just here at the back by the companionway, giving us a total capacity of 12 bunks. And then here there were a big, like a big bar and a big scoop of material, and you'd have kept spinnakers in here, and you'd have packed spinnakers high and on the weather side, so on the high side as you're sailing. That's all been changed. We've got these nice sliding panels here now. Lots of storage in behind here, as you can see. Everything that's on this boat now is new. We basically went to the chandlery and bought all new. The money that we got from our sponsorship allowed us to do that. So we took out all of the old stuff, just kept what was useful. There were a few bits, and everything else is new. So the boat is fully set up, and she's going to be British registered and then commercially registered. So everything will be set up in the best possible way. The British registry is still the international best standard, and we've probably got 65 or 70% of the gear already on the boat now. So we'll be looking to do that full commercial licensing a little bit later on. For now, we've got a few additions which I never thought I'd have on a boat. Come in the galley and see what's going on here. Welcome to Chez Chris. We have a double sink with salt water and fresh water. We have a little burner. We never got this going. Can you imagine trying to operate this at sea, like a flat plate like this? It never happened. Luckily over here there's a little gas burner, but it's got a very shonky kind of cowboy setup. You see in a second where the gas bottle is under the cooking arrangements. This is clearly not the way you want to do this. It needs to be on deck. It needs to have a solenoid in the system, a cutoff valve. It needs to have a vented box that it lives in on deck. But it got us here, so fine. We actually ate very, very well on this trip. One of the great benefits of setting off from France is that meat and cheese were super available, super cheap. So we ate very, very well. And we had Simon and Xavier and Stefan and Yannick, and everybody was cooking and making things, and we did a really good job. I do have a bit of footage though of some of the guys trying to just do a simple task of getting water from the sink in cups and putting in here, and I think you see quite how difficult it is to do anything on a boat at sea. Going forward, we've got the forepeak. I haven't really been in there much. The stuff in there, there was some bits I could deal with, there's some bits I couldn't deal with. There's basically no trouble in there, so I just left it the way it is. we'll need to pull out what's in there. The sails in this boat, we are a little bit limited. There's not very many sails came with it. There's an A3 kite. There's an A4, which wasn't on the boat and was in the UK. We'll pick that up another time. There's a J3, a bigger jib, but remember it's J1, J2, J3. We've got the 3, but we haven't got the other 2. And then we've got a J5. That's a little one that's on deck. So we've got a very small and a kind of mid-sized jib. We've got the staysail, which was a real find. That's a real nice sail. And then just 2 kites. But before we go and race around the world, we're going to have all new sails. So this is all going to get sorted out. So galley here does need some development. Oh, we've got a fridge. It didn't work. My 30th transatlantic, I thought maybe this time I'll have a fridge. Fridge didn't work. So we had a fridge box. Oh, look, some alcohol in there. Don't look. We don't ever drink at sea, but that's not to say that we can't transport it from one place to another to drink when we get there. So we had a few, as you imagine, tipples when we got into Halifax when we finally had arrived. But this all needs to have like big railings putting on here so it's strong to hold on to. This is the base of the mast. We can see the big plate at the bottom, which is where it's connected essentially to the top of the keel that's underneath here. And then we've got these little bricks, and these are the bricks which, same like Falcon, we can put a big metal bar through here. We can jack up the mast. We can take these out and take the mast completely off tension to do our rigging adjustments. Or when we're at sea, we can increase the amount of tension in the mast by just adding and subtracting these bricks from underneath it. So a pretty technical mast setup. And then as promised, here's the hydraulics for the check stay. The check stay, which opposes the force of the staysail on the front of the mast. When we jack up that thing on the deck, it will pull down on this, and when it pulls down on it, it tensions the check stay. But you get a feel here for where we've kind of been at with some rigging. I think there's another way of doing that. We can make it look nice and make it functional, and we can use this function of the boat. The thing in this area though that I'm very aware of is that if you are at the sink and you're working, there's nothing behind you, and if you go over a big bump, it's very easy to kind of fall backwards. So I'm thinking we can build in here some more food storage arrangements, more grab handles on the roof. It just has to be like a jungle gym. The thing with these boats at sea, that big wide open area, you can see all that orange rope that I had tied off. You've got 5 or 6 adults all trying to like clamber around like a kid's jungle gym, and it needs to have proper handles and things. This has been set up for doing charter in quite flat waters in the Mediterranean. It's not what we're doing anymore. We have to do something slightly differently, and never more can that be seen. Let's have a look in here. This is almost the pièce de la résistance. I've got lights. Hang on, I can put lights on. I've got lights in here. Look at this. Never has there been more glory on a Spartan boat. We have silver things. We've got glass bowls. We've got little. Look at this. How fancy is that? So we've got a shower. Now we put this in when we got here. There was a terrible shower arrangement. So I said to the guys, at least when we get to port, we'll be able to have a shower. It is a full operating shower. But I think you get the feeling that for the kind of stuff that we do, we don't kind of need this. This is a great place potentially to put some wet gear, but there's maybe a better place. It all just tends to stay very wet and moist in there. And anybody that's using the toilet totally bungs up the watch change system, which needs to have people come in and get in their gear. So we'll probably end up putting our gear somewhere else in the boat, but for now it's perfect. Very large bathroom. Obviously we've got a cameraman behind the lens here who's hovering over the toilet. There's enough room in here that I think we can divide this in half, and we can have one head here and we can have another head accessible through another part of the boat, because otherwise 20 people working on the boat, one toilet, one wash bowl, it's just not going to happen. It's not allowed under the licensing rules for the MCA. So we'll change this to being 2 separate toilet arrangements, but for now we can enjoy the wide open spaces of a rather nice bathroom. Never happened in Spartan before. One thing that we were able to do in France is purchase an electric toilet before we went. So there was one thing wrong with this toilet, which is that the handle leaked. Never did find the seal for it. So we just crossed the Atlantic with a super leaky handle. If you've got one of these toilets, you know this problem. It's not pumping nasty water past your hand. It's just the water that's used for flushing, but doesn't make for a great environment here. And every time you pump the toilet, it soaks the floor. But never got blocked, did everything it needed to do. So very happy with that. But there's already an electric toilet in the bow ready to come in here and just make this a little bit nicer. Moving down towards the back of the boat, there's a distinct change between this area, which has been modified for corporate, and then this area. This one would have been originally designed to be blocked off. think we need to do a little bit of cleaning here. But this was you could kind of zip this off, and then the crew area couldn't be seen by your corporate guests. You don't want to reveal reality to them, that there's people that have to work. But down inside this part of the boat, we get into what it's really like to be on this boat. So bunks here, got these very wide foam bottoms. They're so wide that it means that when you're at sea and the bunk is cranked up, you can kind of make a little hammock out of your mattress here. Makes it a lot more comfortable. This area, we can see also that this is not the shape of the outside of the hull. This is the inside of the ballast tank, and we've got little pipes that go down. We can see behind us forward there. This is one of the this here is one of the pipes. This pipe is a sight glass for the forward ballast tank. This is, see that little guy? It's just stuck there from when the ballast was in. So up comes the water, showing us the level of water in this ballast tank. Then there's another ballast tank here with its own sight glass, and a third one at the back with its own sight glass. So the boat can move all this water around, 6,000 litres of water, like what's that, 1,500 gallons of water can be moved around and put on the high side so the boat is more powerful. The pumping arrangements and all the engine gear is underneath this area. We use some of these bits of, I don't know what these are, like sun lounger bottoms to try and stop the engine sound. The boat originally had a generator on it. The generator had been removed because it had a problem, it wasn't fixable. So we need to put a generator back in here. But under here is the main engine. There's a 130 horsepower Volvo engine under here. And then this is our day tank. It's very difficult on a boat at sea to work out like how much fuel is in your fuel tanks, because how do you get a level when the boat's moving around? But you can just keep taking out the fuel, putting it into here 35 litres at a time. You can monitor usage, you can strip off water from it, and you can stay on top of how much fuel you've used. This ended up being a massive problem when we were at sea, where the fuel transfer pump stopped working, and I ended up having to start probably about 50 different fuel transfer movements by sucking on it myself. So I drank a lot of diesel on this trip. Luckily, towards the end of it, we found a little stirrup pump and was able to get away from it. But this was potentially something that could have stopped us. If we didn't have the technical skills to work out how to get it going again, we would have been back in France. Here also we can see the underside of the grinder arrangements. These are the transfer drive shafts that go from the center where the grinders are. We can see the gearboxes in here with their selectors. They're just on-off selectors to connect this one, to this side. This starts to turn, and when it turns, it goes up through this L box and joins the bottom of the winch. So I have to say, pretty much every member of the crew has hit their heads on these multiple times. So they're going to end up with padding on them, probably something nice and bright so we don't see them. Also, you can see the previous owners have taped this off. We can put a boot on here so that people's fingers, hair, equipment doesn't get caught up in these, but that's the thing that kind of makes the boat go. Once that power pack is there, 6 people on those grinders, we can move anything. Underneath the bunks on this one, waterproof compartments. There is some of the ballast pipes coming up to these ballast tanks, but all waterproof in here, And then inside here, at the moment, emergency food and emergency water. So we carried 300 litres of emergency water with us when we did this trip. That's all tucked underneath here. And then underneath here is the fuel tanks. We've got 200 litres on one side, 200 litres on the other side, and 150 litres in the back. We brought a couple of jerry cans with us as well. So we had about 600 litres as we set off. We've still got 200 litres left, which I'm very, very happy about. The initial weather report said it was going to be 4.5 days of motoring. As it was just 2, so we did quite well. And then down the back, come and have a look at this. This is our navigation area. It's not too bad. Ugh. So a bit Spartan. Normally you'd see a bigger screen here. Everything's turned off at the moment. We've got our Iridium sat phone. That's the thing that's on the back deck. We've got the big high-powered single sideband radio at the top. Not used very much anymore. There's some parts of the world, like in South China Sea, we still do a lot of race reports on the single sideband radio because China won't allow the flyover of the satellites that allow for satellite communication. But is it something we're going to keep for going around the world? Maybe. We'll have to see. Satellite stuff is great, but at the end of the day, having something which is just broadcasting from the boat could still be a solution. You can actually get gribs through this. There's something called, what's that called? The snail mail, is there? Is that right? Where you can do an emailing system backs and forwards through your single sideband if you know the correct carriers. I'm not sure that still exists anymore, but there was a way until 10 years ago, certainly, you could receive gribs and basic emails through that system. So we may still yet use it. You can see I got my bump cap. I love my bump caps, but there's 8 crew. I can't give everybody a bump cap, so I put the bump cap over the one thing which seemed to be hitting everybody's heads, which is the underside of this grinder. Over here we've got VHFs, and then we've got the header units for the autopilot. The autopilot didn't work on this trip. We've identified the problem. One of the solenoids is stuck, so it needs stripping apart, but we do have full autopilot on this boat, and that will be going into operation pretty quickly. Inside the chart table, well, nothing for the crew, just captain things in here. This was completely full of Haribo during this trip, so this was definitely just entirely all my area, and nobody else was allowed in here. But very, very serious captainy things going inside here, as you can imagine. And then a few bits and bobs left over from the voyage. Just this was some of the great things we found. The original owners of the boat had obviously got themselves pretty organized. All stainless steel fasteners, all laid out in different boxes. Like, just a joy to find something like this on the boat. Many more of them in there. But a lot of the things, obviously, when a boat's been used for charter work, it's been ridden hard and put away wet quite a few times. It's probably at a point where the owner himself would have wanted to come on board and refresh everything and replenish everything. We've jumped in and bought it at that point. We knew that, so a lot of the stuff just got junked and we just started again. New fire extinguishers, life-saving gear, life jackets, everything all brand new. So that's it. At the very back there is the lazarette, which is nice and tidy now, but there was a whole story in there. We had quite a few issues on the voyage, which we've got a little bit of footage here of me digging through huge amounts of crap, which basically the bin bags were stored in here, the garbage bags, and unfortunately they were not being tied off correctly. So when we got into rough weather, we ended up with the garbage breaking loose in here. The breather on the fuel tank had not been closed properly, so that's my fault. So a little bit of fuel in here, and then a big box of noodles. Just have a look at these images. It was not my finest day, but we got it tidied up and all nice and clean now. I think in the future we may end up putting a couple of bunks in here. From my own experience of being on the boat in the last couple of weeks, having the opportunity to come out my bunk, go up these stairs and arrive at the back of the boat, right next to the wheel, already behind the traveler, potentially fantastic. When things start going wrong and you call the skipper on a boat like this, it's all going wrong mostly in the cockpit, and just getting down the cockpit safely, still clipped on, is very difficult. It might be great to be able to just come straight up these ladders and be in the command position at the back of the boat, ready to hopefully help. We'll have to see how that develops. And at the back there, big carbon fiber quadrant, that big 8-foot rudder going down underneath the boat, and the autopilot equipment, hydraulic autopilot ram at the back there. So a big space, not very used right now. I think we can do something in here to increase the capacity of the boat, but thank God it's not the way it looked. It was like a porridge cave for a couple of days through that rough weather with all this paper and garbage in here. It was quite horrible, but a little bit of hard work and we got it sorted out. Obviously there's a few things that we found on the boat that we had to junk. There's a few things that didn't work. There was no tables and chairs, but there were, as there always is, a few magical things. And one of them was this Watermaker. The owner said he hadn't used it for about 3 years. He wasn't kind of interested in using the Watermaker. The stuff they were doing, they just had bottled water on board. But this is a modular 60 from Shenica, and this is an amazing Watermaker. It's about 10,000 euros a Watermaker. It has 2 pumps, and you can select whether it runs 1 pump or 2 pumps. It can turn out 30 litres an hour on 1 pump, or it can turn out 60 litres per hour on 2 pumps. I got it going, we got new filters into it. An interesting thing with that, everyone said, oh, you can't get filters for these, it's impossible. All we did is went to the Home Depot, basically, to a home improvement store, and got the kind of filters that you get for your normal water system, and just completely changed the carriages or the canisters rather, that the Watermaker filters went into, and then just used the ones from the other system. So went straight around the problem. We were getting quoted hundreds of dollars to expedite new filters in. All we did is went to Home Depot, basically in France, and paid like 20 bucks for filters. So got this going, and it has worked flawlessly. We're on 524 hours now. It was at 385, so it's done 40 hours of work during this trip over. And it's produced wonderful fresh water for us all the way in, to the point that we actually were able to have a shower at one point. So once it gets going, Watermaker is always a little bit idiosyncratic. You've got to work out what you're doing with them, but this one has been absolutely perfect, and didn't even know it was on board. It wasn't even listed in the inventory. Inventory did say water boiler, tables, chairs, generator. Didn't have any of those. but we did have this Watermaker, so you win some, you lose some. This was great. So that's the first look at Weddell. She's come a long way to be here, and we went through a lot of trials and tribulations to make it happen, but I think you'll agree she's perfect for the task that we've got in mind. Few modifications, few things to change and make better, but she's already proved herself with a 3,000-mile Transat, no issues, no problems, and all the crew had a great time. Now, but going on this kind of boat is something that's of interest to you. Remember, we are taking open enrollment for the Ocean Globe Race. We're taking the veterans around the world, but we're also taking members of the public. So if you have interest, have a look in the description below. There's some links there to the website, and you start to get a feel for what it might be to come on board this boat and race part or all the way around the world yourself. It's right here. This is happening. We're going to go around the world. Weddell's just one of the boats we're going to be doing. We'll be bringing more information about the other boats very, very soon. If you hadn't already, go over and have a look at Patreon, have a look at what we're doing there. There's the seamanship videos, there's the little blogs that I do, which are more details of how the projects go along, behind the scenes stuff, and you get to see these videos earlier than anybody else. So check out Patreon if you want, but she's right here. If you want to come and sail around the world, we got the boat for you. I'll see you next time on the Mariner. Cheers.